She blocked the aisle and told him he was in the wrong section. He calmly showed his ticket, first class, but she still said, "There's no way you belong up here." Then the flight attendant leaned in and whispered something that left her frozen in her seat, and the entire plane silent. It was boarding time for flight 752 from Atlanta to New York. A long line of weary travelers shuffled onto the plane. First-class passengers were already seated, sipping their drinks or scrolling their phones. But when Marcus Bell, a 56-year-old black man in a sharp gray blazer, stepped into the cabin, heads turned. He wasn't flashy. He didn't look like a celebrity. He looked professional, calm, well-groomed, and confident. But that didn't stop the stares, especially from her. A woman in her mid-60s, seated in 2A, blonde, with pearl earrings and a designer bag that screamed old money. As Marcus placed his bag in the overhead bin and glanced at his seat, to be, she looked up and narrowed her eyes. Then she said it. "Excuse me, this is first class." Marcus paused. "Yes, I know, I'm in to be." She clutched her purse tighter. No, I don't think you understand. This is first class." Marcus gave a small smile. "I understand perfectly, ma'am. I've flown this route dozens of times." She shook her head, now louder. "There must be a mistake. You people usually sit in the back." The surrounding passengers went quiet. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse. He simply pulled out his ticket and handed it to her. But she still wasn't satisfied. "I'll wait for the flight attendant. You're not sitting next to me." Marcus, ever the gentleman, stepped aside. Section 3. The flight attendant's response. A young white flight attendant approached, trying to hide the tension in her steps. "Is everything all right here?" she asked. The woman in 2A immediately chimed in. "This man is trying to sit here, but he clearly doesn't belong in first class. He must have switched tickets or something." The flight attendant looked at Marcus, then scanned his boarding pass. Her expression didn't change. "Sir, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Welcome to first class." The woman gasped. "That can't be. I mean, no offense, but..." And that's when the flight attendant leaned in closer and said, loud enough for the front row to hear, "Ma'am, he didn't just buy a first-class ticket. He owns the aviation company that charters this route." Gasps, silence, then a few awkward coughs. Marcus quietly took his seat. The woman shrunk back, color draining from her cheeks. What no one realized was that Marcus Bell wasn't just a first-class passenger. He was the CEO of Horizon Aerocarta, a black-owned company that had recently begun leasing high-end planes for premium domestic routes. This particular aircraft, it's one of his. He hadn't intended for anyone to know. He traveled modestly, never showed off, but that woman's assumption that his skin didn't belong in comfort triggered a fire he'd kept cool for decades. Marcus had grown up in Alabama in the 1970s. His mother cleaned houses. His father worked nights at a steel mill. First class wasn't just a dream back then, it was a fantasy. But he'd worked hard, served in the Air Force, studied aerospace engineering, built a business from nothing. And now, ironically, the woman trying to block him from his seat was flying on a plane he had funded. The rest of the flight was quiet, except for the occasional glance and hushed murmurs. Midway through, a man from row 3 leaned forward. "Mr. Bell, I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing. My son follows your story. You inspire him." Marcus nodded graciously. Toward the end of the flight, the same woman who had mocked him hesitantly turned his way. I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I didn't know who you were." Marcus looked at her, then calmly said, You shouldn't have to know who I am to treat me with basic respect. She looked away, ashamed, and this time she said nothing back. As the plane touched down in New York, passengers applauded like they often do. But this time, the applause felt heavier, as if something more important had landed. When Marcus stood to grab his bag, a young black flight attendant walked up with tears in her eyes. "My brother wants to be a pilot," she whispered. "He's gonna love hearing about this." Marcus smiled, handed her a card, and said, "Tell him to call me. I'll help." The woman in 2A watched this exchange silently. She had boarded the plane thinking class, and race determined worth. She left the plane realizing grace and dignity meant everything more. Marcus exited the gate, pulling his small carry-on with the same quiet confidence he entered with. No cameras, no entourage, just a man who had earned his seat and then some. This wasn't about ego. It was about the silent battles black men fight every day just to be seen as equals, and how sometimes the most powerful clapback is dignity under fire. What are your thoughts on this story? Comment down and subscribe Lifelines.